pastor Sunday too. So.
We had this tube, and we decided we were going to put some sand in it, and each one of us were going to blow at the same time because it's like a science experience. What's going to happen? You know, you're 5 and 7 or so, and on the count of 3, we're supposed to blow at the same time. I ended up with a mouthful of sand.
Because when he said 3, I blew first. So, but in this passage, isn't it interesting how James and John are basically asking shotgun, and that Jesus actually responds to their request.
Which, when he responds to his request, they don't even realize what they're being asked to do. As far as, you know, can you drink this cup and be baptized where I was baptized? They have no idea. They're thinking earthly and, you know, a war maybe, or a battle maybe there, not what they're actually being asked to do.
Right, which oftentimes when we are asking Jesus things, we don't really know what we're asking for. What is amazing is when James and John say, we want you to do what you ask of us, Jesus actually goes, okay. And he speaks of the fact of the cup that he will drink and the baptism to which he's baptized. Now, that's not to be compared to our cup on the table and the baptismal behind us. That's really talking about, as Jesus says just a few verses before this passage, I'm going to Jerusalem to die. Crucifixion is the cup that James and John will drink. Crucifixion is the baptism to which they will be baptized. To which Jesus predicts and says, you will do that. But as for calling shotgun on the left hand or the right hand side, which would probably be a prime minister role in a typical royal household, and a chief of staff or a royal vizier, Jesus says that's reserved for those who are prepared for that place. But we gotta love the disciples in this story. They get all upset. Totally upset. Probably for this simple reason. James and John asked first. Now, how often was it in our house that it was a case of who asked mom and dad first? Matter.
I can't remember a time that it did, really.
Well, usually what would happen would be, you had more friends than I did. He did. Usually we have to ask, if we ask Dad first, he would say, go to Mom. Because Mom had final say in all of this. Can someone stay over? Ask your mom. Ask that. So probably what the disciples are facing here is, well, jeepers, James and John, you asked what we all wanted. And now where's our place for it? You ever felt like that? When someone has gotten there just a step closer than you have? You feel they've stepped out of line? I've heard now that just this morning there's a trick to getting prompt service at Walgreens that I'll disclose to you later.
Oh.
In the drive-up. Good to know.
I did have a friend, you know how they're now getting rid of people at McDonald's actually taking the order, and they had a little desk thing that you know, and he said, when you get ready to punch it, it's amazing how many people come up and will just, you know, wait on you right then and there. It's quick service that way.
Oh, that responds well with that. So, is this the case do we see this in the world too? Someone always trying to be better than everyone else, someone trying to get a little more than anyone else?
You see that about everywhere.
Yeah, I think part of this story is about more than the rivalry between, you know, James and John seem to have been on the same plate with this, but the disciples were on a different plate, and Jesus is speaking to them and saying, it shouldn't be this way. You shouldn't do it this way. How often did we find that when we weren't trying to win it all for ourselves, that we had a much better outcome when we did things together.
Well, when you work together, things just work better that way. When you look for the other person and what their needs are, and meeting that need, that tends to change the outcome of things for them and for you as well.
Yeah, and when no one cares who takes the credit for it, it's amazing what actually can happen when no one is seeking the glory, so to speak, and taking all the credit.
It's interesting too that Jesus, when he grants it to them or whatever, the other disciples, when they're arguing, it's like they don't even realize it. But Jesus, there's enough. There's enough to go around. There's always enough. There's always more when you involve Jesus.
And how often do we think of ourselves here in our church that there's only so much to go around when there's limited good? How often do we feel, well, we need to divide this up. We need to have leaders, followers, and supporters, and there's not enough for all of us to have the same attention as Jesus would have.
We forget to add in the Jesus factor. Once you add in the Jesus factor, the sky's the limit. It's endless as to what you can do.
Yeah. It's interesting that Jesus from the get-go doesn't really say, well, wait a minute here, I'm in charge. Why are you asking me of this? Why are you working this way? He actually complies. He actually tries to accommodate. And I think that's the way God really works in this equation. That sometimes unexpected results happen when we're working and we don't know to whom the credit is going to go. You were sharing with me yesterday a story that you had heard on the radio about someone being called into talking to someone about faith life, about joining a church. And could you share that story with the rest of these young people?
So this guy's working at a radio station, and he hears God telling that you need to invite this guy to Easter Sunday to church. And it's like, okay, he goes in to talk to this guy, and this guy's like, I'm an atheist, I don't want to go to your stupid church, and just very, disrespectful to him. What he doesn't realize is a few years later, this guy comes up to him with his wife and kids, and he says, hey, you don't know this, but I was at this radio station a few years ago, and I was out of a job, but they asked me if maybe I could do some work there. And so I was laying tile in this office, and you came in there and was talking to this guy who was just being awful to you. But he says, I was on the floor just crying my eyes out, knowing I need to go to church. And so I got home, told my wife, we need to go to church. We've been going to church and following Jesus ever since. So here he's thinking this whole time, like, God, you sent me here. Why did you send me to talk to this guy? He didn't even get it. And he wasn't even supposed to be speaking to him. He was speaking to the guy that was behind laying tile.
So oftentimes our words, our deeds go noticed in unexpected places. We are so prone to the same mistakes that James and John made and the disciples making. Because anytime we get swept up in these petty arguments over who is great and who is more worthy of attention and whose opinions count more and who should be in charge, we become just as divided as two brothers can be. And whenever that happens, we will miss Jesus in his glory. Period. Because the glory has to leave the room. We miss that opportunity to share with God something bold and exciting, a vision of the future, a hope for tomorrow. Because every time, and I know this, every time you get caught up with yourself, you hardly ever hear God's voice. Period. If it's all about you, then there's no room for anyone else. And Jesus says to his disciples, and he's saying to us today, whoever wishes to be great among you must be your servant. And whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. God's kingdom's upside down. We've been talking about that this month. It is not about how many people are below you. It is all about how many people you've raised above you. If you truly want to be first in this upside down kingdom that God is inviting us in, you first must be last. Because it's not about the glory you get. It's about the glory God receives through you. Just like the man that thought he was called to talk to one person in that office. Didn't even see the guy laying the tile behind the desk. But God called him to talk about this and another overheard. So, sibling rivalries, we don't have to be blood related. There are things where we can basically do, well, you did this better than me, and I did that better than you, and he was certainly a much better social butterfly than your minister ever was. But these rivalries simply occur because when us, as spiritual brothers and sisters, fail to recognize that there is enough of God's love and attention to go around. And we choose instead to replace a sense of God's love with this sense of selfishness, that I deserve it, that you ought to work for me, God. But here's the truth. And you pointed this out to me yesterday. There's enough love from God for everyone in here, for everyone in the world, for that matter. It is we who keep trying to convince each other that there is this hierarchy of God's love in church. Only if you are worthy do you receive. And time again, we are victims of our own folly. Because whenever we fight, and I know some of you have been around for a good church fight, as to who's the boss, who's in control, who has final say, everyone ends up losing, even in the victory they may claim. We don't like to hear this kind of passage. When we serve each other, and only when we're seen serving one another, do we really bring a glimpse, just that glimmer of God's glory that is destined for this earth. So, brother, I know there's not a race, and I know one of the things we accomplished together when I was in college, first year, and you were still in high school at this time, weren't you?
Yeah.
You were senior in high school. We had an audacity plan. Our cousins in Southern Illinois had always expected us to arrive on our bicycles at their house. We took this to mean we need a bicycle from Bennett to out in Illinois on our bicycles. I had a 18 speed, I can't remember, did you have a 12?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So, believe it or not, we spoke to our mom about this. Little nervous about this trip across Illinois we were going to do. On a fine June summer day that wasn't too hot, we would travel to our cousin's house on bicycle. 130 30 miles.
No thanks.
14 hours later.
14 hours later, at the average speed of 12 miles per hour, we had breakfast in that too. We packed lunches. We had to deal with Illinois road construction.
That was quite interesting too. We're standing there waiting for, the slow light, 'cause, we're so fast and speedy anyhow. And this lady on the radio goes, hey, it's gonna be a little bit, they're on bikes. And we're like, we can wait for a couple more motorcycles. She's like, no, these are the pedal kind. And you could hear them laughing at us the whole time we were riding up this hill to get around.
Oh, yeah, there, one difference that was happening was I was already training to do this bicycle trip, while Nathan hadn't done one single moment of being on his bicycle for any real length of time. I was doing it in the evenings, riding on the country lanes to get up the stamina for the 130. And he just went on cold turkey, followed me along. We had breakfast in Mattoon, all those hills. You don't realize, really, on a trip like that, how tall hills are around Montrose, Illinois, until you actually have to ride them up on a 12-speed bicycle, or an 18-speed bicycle, as it was. But we made it together. Both arrived about the same time, completely covered in salt. Mom came down and caught up with us about a half hour away from our destination. And do you know what our cousin's response was to our great effort that we did that day for 14 hours? Well, I thought you would have packed them on the back of your dad's truck and just dropped them off 2 blocks away and rode them.
That was my plan.
But we did it. And we didn't care who got the glory with that. All glory to God the Father. Thank God for brothers like him.
And brothers like you.
Amen.